Good afternoon. Welcome to the British Embassy in Warsaw. It's good to have the opportunity to hear from my friend and colleague, Dmytro Kuleba, the Ukrainian Foreign Minister, at what is an extremely difficult time. What we have seen on the streets of Irpin and Bucha are scenes that we will never forget. We have seen butchery, evidence of rape and sexual violence, as well as the indiscriminate killing of civilians. We will ensure that the perpetrators are brought to justice for these barbaric crimes. And together with our allies, we will step up our efforts to stop Putin's appalling war. 3 weeks ago, the UK led 41 states to refer these atrocities to the International Criminal Court. We're providing additional funding to the ICC. The UK military and police are providing technical assistance to the investigations, and the Metropolitan Police War Crimes Unit have commenced the collection of evidence. We're working very closely with the Ukrainian government on this. We've appointed former ICC judge Sir Howard Morrison as an independent advisor to the Ukrainian Prosecutor General. And today I can announce that we're launching a £10 million civil society fund to support organisations in Ukraine, including those helping the victims of conflict-related sexual violence. We will not rest until these criminals have been brought to justice. We are clear that after these appalling crimes, Russia has no place on the Human Rights Council. And it is the responsibility of the UK and our allies, and that's what Dmytro and I have discussed today, to step up our support for our brave Ukrainian friends. That means more weapons and more sanctions. Putin must lose in Ukraine. Later this week, the G7 foreign ministers and the NATO foreign ministers will meet. We need to announce a tough new wave of sanctions. The reality is that money is still flowing from the West into Putin's war machine, and that has to stop. In Brussels, I will be working with our partners to go further, as has been advocated by Dmytro, in banning Russian ships from our ports, in cracking down on Russian banks, in going after new industries filling Putin's war chest, like gold, and agreeing a clear timetable to eliminate our imports of Russian oil, gas and coal. We also need even more weapons of the type the Ukrainians are asking for. The UK is supplying more, including next-generation light anti-tank weapons, Javelin missiles and Starstreak anti-aircraft systems. And last week, we hosted a donor conference with our allies to secure more. The fact is that being tough is the only approach that will work. Putin has escalated this war, and this approach is vital to ensuring he loses in Ukraine and that we see a full withdrawal of Russian troops and Ukraine's hand is strengthened at the negotiating table. There should be no talk of removing sanctions while Putin's troops are in Ukraine and the threat of Russian aggression looms over Europe. We need to see Putin withdraw his troops. We need to see Ukraine's full territorial integrity restored. We need to see Russians' ability for further aggression stopped. We need a plan to rebuild Ukraine, and we need justice done at the International Criminal Court. Dmytro, we salute your bravery and the bravery of the Ukrainian people. We are determined to help in whatever way we can. We will back you unwaveringly in your negotiations. And together, we will not rest until Putin fails and Ukraine prevails. Dmytro, I'd like to invite you to make a few comments.
Thank you. It's always a great pleasure to have another meaningful conversation with Liz. I regret we're not seeing each other in Kiev, but I hope I will be able to host you in Kiev soon. Ukraine won the battle for Kiev, but the war goes on. We are preparing for the new large-scale offensive by Russia in eastern Ukraine. They will try to capture more territories in Donetsk and Lugansk regions. They will try to entrench and root themselves in the Kherson region. They will try to capture bleeding Mariupol. What you've seen, the horrors that we've seen in Bucha are just a tip of the iceberg of all the crimes that have been committed by Russian army in the territory of Ukraine so far. And I can tell you without an exaggeration, but with great sorrow, that the situation in Mariupol is much worse compared to what we've seen in Bucha and other cities, towns and villages nearby Kyiv. Horrors of Bucha, Mariupol and other places demand serious G7 and EU sanctions. I appreciate everything that has been done so far, but Liz is right. The West continues to fuel Russian war machine with payments for fossil fuels, with trade that is still taking place between Russia and Western countries, with financial transactions conducted through Russian banks that have not been disconnected from SWIFT yet. And when we discuss the sanctions that must be imposed on Russia without any delay, actually we have the same speaking points with Liz, and I appreciate that the fact that Ukraine and the United Kingdom are aligned on this issue too. Half measures are not enough anymore. I demand from our partners, on behalf of the victims of Bucha and the people of Ukraine, to take the most severe sanctions against Russia this week. This is not the request of Ukraine's foreign minister. This is the plea of the victims of rape, torture and killings, their relatives and the entire Ukrainian nation. I have heard thousands of arguments why this or that sanction cannot be imposed against Russia. It's time to put all hesitation, reluctance, business-wise arguments aside and think about human sufferings and the need to stop the Russian war machine until it kills and destroys more on its way. I invite foreign representatives, my colleagues, those who still have doubts whether to disconnect Russian banks from SWIFT or to continue buying Russian gas, oil and coal, or to receive Russian vessels in ports and process products either sold to Russia or bought from Russia. I invite all of them to visit Bucha without any delay, to visit a small village and stand in front of the mass grave, to see the bodies of dead Ukrainian women who had been raped before being killed and whom the Russians tried to set on fire to hide the traces of their crimes. And I do this address to all foreign ministers who will be meeting this week at NATO, at the European Union, at the G7 ministerial. If you have doubts, reluctance, or arguments about the need to keep doing business with Russia, go to Bucha first, and then talk to me. The same goes for weapons. There have been some hesitations and reluctance to provide Ukraine with all weapons that we are asking for. The same approach should be applied to the issue of weapons. The more weapons we have, the sooner we will be able to win this war and to prevent Russia from committing more crimes. I appreciate the United Kingdom's readiness to work closely with Ukraine on the investigation of the committed war crimes and to bringing perpetrators and their commanders to account. International justice takes time, but we will be focused on making sure that they pay the price for what they have done to the people of Ukraine. After everything we've seen, I believe I would like to echo what Lee said and also demand the expulsion of Russia from the Human Rights Council. Ukraine has been raising this issue before. We now insist that this must be done immediately. Finally, I would like to say that 2 points. We discussed how Ukraine, United Kingdom and Poland can further build up our relations in the trilateral format that we created shortly before the aggression. This last month demonstrated that Poland, Ukraine and the United Kingdom are the closest friends, and they can do a lot together. And I see that there is a political will in both London and Warsaw to do more. And finally, I would like to thank Liz and the entire UK government and the people of the United Kingdom to everything that you have done so far and your resolve not to stop until Ukraine wins and justice prevails. Because the victory of Ukraine will be the victory of justice in Europe and in the world. Thank you.
We'll take a few